The whole for the Village of Cary for Tuesday, February 19th, 2019 to order with roll call, please.
Weinhammer? Here. McAlpine? Here. Kraus?
Here.
Cavelli? Here. Betts? Here. Kostler?
Here.
Thank you. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Chief, can you take a look and see if anybody's... I usually get Brian to do it.
You could ask Mike, right?
We're good. Okay. We'll now move to the public comment where the audience can ask the committee of the whole anything unrelated to what's on the current agenda. Is there anybody has any comments for the committee of the whole? Okay, we'll go ahead and close the committee of the whole, the public comment at 6:30. First item up for discussion is regarding a turning movement restrictions on First Street at the Oak Knoll Early Childhood Center. Eric?
Thank you, Mayor. At our January Committee of the Whole discussion on this last topic here, the board had wished to obtain some additional information on the efforts that the school had already begun on trying to mitigate the traffic concerns over on First Street near the Oak Knoll Early Childhood Center. Staff has since had a discussion with the District 26 staff, and this evening we have Principal Ahern from the school that is here to present some of the information that she has with regards to this topic and also answer the board's questions. So with that, I'll introduce Principal Ahern, and we'll also be here as well to answer questions from staff.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here tonight. My name's Jenny Ahern, and I'm, along with being the principal of Oak Knoll, I'm a 29-year resident of Cary. My children have gone through the schools, so I'm a community member as well as a principal. I want to thank Eric and also Chief Finland for coming over and discussing concerns with us, and for all the work you've done, Eric, on this project for us. I really appreciate it very much. I'm sorry I wasn't here the last time you discussed it. I didn't realize it was going to be discussed that evening, but I did watch the board meeting. So from that, I picked up some of the concerns. So I just kind of wanted to share a few things with you and then certainly answer any questions that you might have for me. I'm a little nervous, I have to say. I'm used to much smaller people. So anyway, I did want to clarify, I know there was some confusion about children, parents getting out of cars to get children into cars in our parking lot. We actually have two distinct groups of people. We have our preschool, which is children ages 3 to 5, and we do ask parents to park their cars and walk their children over to door 5, that area that we're looking at, the entrance right there in that parking lot. We thought we had enough time in between that and kindergarten, because then kindergarten car rider children are dropped off. There, they do come in, and we encourage parents very much to just come along the curb, drop off. We do have adults. We have bus duty. I'm usually out there every morning and every afternoon. And we've introduced some other things to help that parking. We do have some parents that still want to get out of the car and walk their kindergartners over. And I'm not going to discourage that. They're 5 years old, and if that's what a parent feels the best doing, I think that's important. So we work with that. We have a handful, it's not many. Just to give you some data on the numbers that we're talking about here, in the morning, blended preschool, and I think it was you, Ms. Cavelli, that asked about the bus riders and the car riders and why weren't more people on the bus. Busing for our early childhood program is provided to children that have IEPs, and also our at-risk students. That's an automatic. Even in those groups, we do have some parents who would prefer to drive, not feeling comfortable with the bus for 3 and 4-year-olds. Not many. I mean, we really do bus most of those children. As a matter of fact, the number for ECE, we have 49 bus riders, and for our RISE and PFA, we have 35. So almost 80 kids coming on the bus, the early childhood. However, we have 19 families in the morning coming by car, and at the afternoon dismissal, we have 21 leaving. That's just early childhood. Kindergarten, we have a total enrollment of 200 kindergarten students. Of those, 151 are bus riders. So really, the majority of our students are being bused. It takes 8 buses to accomplish that. That's what we use the loop for. So we really do need to kind of keep that loop free for our buses, because it's really the only area that's long enough where they can get in and safely get out. So we have about, I think in kindergarten, we have about 49, I believe, children whose parents are bringing them or walk. Really, at the beginning of the year, we did have some walkers, which was really nice. Weather got cold, and we saw a big increase in car riders. So that's what's happening there. So that just gives you a little bit of an idea of our volume. We quickly saw that with the turn, that we need to keep our traffic flow moving, because if we don't, we back up on First Street, and it has even blocked buses from being able to get into our loop. So that's been problematic. That's where we really started to talk about the right turn in and the right turn out. I have asked parents to already do that. I did that in the fall, I believe, probably around October, and many parents complied. I do know that traffic impact to surrounding streets was a major concern, but I feel, and I know Eric could probably address this better than I, but I feel like it's probably kind of already happened. I think what's nice, though, would be that we could now have some teeth, so when I see people not following that rule, there would be a consequence. The other thing that would be very nice for us is we do have a new group of parents really almost every year, unlike other schools here. You know, if you're going to Briargate, you might not know the traffic pattern year 1, but boy, by 2nd or 3rd grade, parents have it down. We don't have that luxury. You know, it changes. Our groups, they're here. Our parents are also very concerned. A lot are leaving our area to get to other schools, to pick up other children. That's part of what we have with an attendance center. I've told parents, and they've been wonderful about this too, don't rush, don't get impatient. Your child will be safe no matter where they are. We never leave a child unattended. If you're late to pick them up with us, that's fine, we'll watch them. And I know that the other schools and the other principals will do the same, because we've talked about it. But parents do have after-school activities that they also want to get to. So that's just kind of another layer of sometimes where people want to keep things moving as efficiently as possible. Let me see. The other thing, the age of our students, most of our students, if not all of our students, are in a booster or a car seat. And that's new, really, in the last few years in Illinois with the restrictions. I don't particularly know off the top of my head, but honestly, I think kids have to be about 50 pounds before they can get out of a car seat. Booster seats are in all the cars. It also is a problem for carpooling, because people don't have cars big enough for all the car seats. You know, they have car seats for their own children, but they can't take anybody else. So there's some of just the general things that happens. And somebody also mentioned the traffic in the morning coming out of St. Peter and Paul. It is not traffic from their school, but they do, I believe, Mass is at 8 o'clock, and it's the people leaving Mass that are exiting onto First Street a lot. It's not problematic, but it does add to that just general, they're right across. Our driveways are looking at each other. So that's the other piece there. Impact area traffic patterns. I mean, kindergarten starts dropping off about 8:30. and then preschool at 8:45 in the morning. By about 8:50, we're finished. So you're looking at about a 20-minute timeline, I think, there, and the same in the afternoon. Our midday pickups are not very problematic because they're so much smaller. It's just early childhood. So I've done a lot of talking. I hope I've answered some of your questions, and if you have any questions for me, I'd be happy to answer.
Any questions?
I don't really have questions. Thanks for showing up, and this is fantastic that you gave us all that background.
Oh,
But my only question would be to you is, what's your, because there's nothing really spelled out right now. We had some options before, but what would be your best case scenario as far as the board is concerned and what we should do to solve these problems?
well, we have some work to do on our own in Cary, District 26, some things like to help ease some congestion of preschool overlapping with kindergarten. And but the right turn in and the right turn out is what I think would certainly help from the standpoint of it's easy, it's direct, and it will keep the flow moving so we can continually wave people up. Sometimes we come to a standstill out there because people are waiting to make lefts or somebody's trying to come in as a left. And I do know we even had a concerned citizen call the police one afternoon because there was a near traffic accident on First Street. And it was because our cars were lined up to come in, from what I heard, and then another car went around, which was, there's usually enough room to do that, but they didn't see what somebody else was doing, making the left. And from what I heard, a few parents witnessed this and said, oh my heavens, there was almost an accident right there. So I think that's, I get that. We want the kids, we want it to be very safe around 3 schools with Cary Methodist right up the hill with their preschool as well. So if that could be done, I think it would help us as a good first step. Thank you.
So you're also saying not to do the left turn?
Right.
from
I know there was
First.
discussion on that. I guess I'm of the background. I'm here. I'm going to ask for everything. And hopefully you'll see that. The left turn out of the parking lot is not probably as vital to me as the right turn in. But I think I do see parents making the left out, but if nobody is making a left to block coming in, that might be an appropriate first step. I'll leave that up to Mr. Morimoto and you to deliberate. But I think for me, I just kind of want to see the traffic be able to move a little more unencumbered or without people waiting as much to get out.
And I was going to ask about staggering times, because I know that has helped some school districts. Do you know if there's any possibility that may be happening for the next school year?
Staggering our start times from the other buildings? That was...
Or even from the pre-K to the K?
Well, believe it or not, we are staggered that way, but it's not enough of a stagger, I think. And I know I talked to Mr. Morimoto, and a parent actually has brought to me the idea, and again, it's enforcement, of having like preschool parents have a big sticker of a color, and only that color is allowed in the parking lot. Again, we'd have to be out like practically on the street to enforce that, which is a little more problematic for us. But we could look at that. I have had some preliminary conversations about time and what we could do in that area to kind of lessen the congestion in the parking lot. And for the parents that are walking in the parking lot as the kindergartner parents start to come in, because that's really another issue.
Yeah, it just seems like such a short period of time that you're running into this issue that I would hate to restrict turning, when we're talking about looks like a 20-minute window of time. So unless, I don't know, Eric, if any of your suggestions were to limit it just specific to hours or hour.
Yes, during our initial discussion with some of the options we had placed out there, the first stab at making a recommendation for the board was to consider that restriction only on school days between, I believe it was 8 a.m. and 4 p.m. Which is consistent with what I've utilized at other school districts in my career.
What if we even limited it further, like 8 AM to 9 AM?
And that's another option as well. It makes for a bigger sign, but other than
Well,
that,
just because I
logistically,
know
it's
one of
fine,
the
though.
concerns that one of the parents brought up last time, I believe, was that during midday, if you're picking up your child, when it's not crowded at all, you're still restricted with those turns. And if it's not an issue during that time, I'd hate to see somebody have to travel all around just for that.
I still think it would be, thank you. I still think it would be better for our midday drop-off to have the preschool parents adhere to that same standard, to come in on the right like that. I just think it's it's the way the parking spots are aligned even. It makes for easy pull-in when you come in that way, and the same for the going out. So I think it might be better to do the whole day.
What time does the midday pickup end? What time?
The midday, they pick the children up at 11:30, and 12:30 is when the drop-off begins for afternoon session, because we have 2 sessions.
So that's enough of a stagger. The half an hour is enough of a stagger.
That piece
That works well.
fine. The issue is the very beginning of the day and the very end of the day when we have kindergarten as well,
Yeah.
coming in and leaving. The morning is a little bit easier because parents stagger their own arrival between 8:30 and 8:45. So we do have a pretty good flow, I would say, in the mornings, but afternoon is really problematic.
And as Principal Ahern mentioned, the PM is where the queuing exists.
Oh, I thought it was in the
And kind
morning.
of like the imagery that's shown on the screen right now, that condition, as you mentioned, in the morning time and dropping off, it is still a short window of time when it's an issue, but at least the cars are spread out over that 15 to 20-minute period.
But there's still queuing in the morning, correct?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But the queuing isn't so much the issue as the friction that's created at the intersection itself when the cars are turning and trying to turn left at the same time as through traffic moving through.
Could I ask, what were the numbers of the cars that you'd said, were there 35 or something you'd said that were dropping off? What were those numbers again?
Sure, I'd be happy to go over them again. So if I talk about in the morning, we would have roughly 49 kindergarten cars dropping off, starting at 8:30, and then at least 19 preschool cars come in at 8:45. And then in the afternoon, it's that same number for kindergarten, and we have about 21 parents that are there first to pick up their child.
Okay. The parking lot that's where the cars are looping, is that just for parent parking? Do you have staff parking there?
Very few. We have a parking lot in the back of the school that we encourage all staff. If we have traveling staff, they might park there, but it's about 1 or 2. And ET parks there, extended time.
Is there enough parking spaces? You mentioned the preschool parents specifically who drop off. Are they parking in the spots, or are they
They do,
parking along the curb and walking in?
they park in the spots until the spots are gone, and then they pull up to the curb.
Okay, so the spots fill up then where,
They do. They do pretty quickly.
I think last time we spoke about this, there were concerns about cut-through traffic, and which I'm not directing this at you, so if there's anybody else in the audience that wants to address that issue or has concerns with it, because I do, as far as if we restrict this to right turns only, is that something that residents still feel is going to cause cut-through traffic onto Sunset to yeah.
You can come up, sure.
Just before you speak, Rose, right? Nice to meet you. No, I'm Jill. What's your name, Jill? Yeah. Jill? Okay. And one of the things, and I know your concerns, I heard them at the last meeting, but one of the things I do want to point out to you as well is I have made the request. So I think the current situation is not going to change too dramatically, because I think a lot of parents have found alternative routes in order to make that right turn in. A lot of our parents are from the Hillhurst area. They can come right over, they don't have to use Crest. The group that I think are the Crest people, some are legitimately probably coming that way because of where they live. because they're all walkers.
Is going to
It's-
come my direction.
Deer Path, actually, depending, I mean, they could be, they could cut through the other side of the neighborhood. They could come down Silver Lake and cut over one of the side streets. That's what I do in the morning. So, I mean, there are other options. I don't think it's, just because we're making this change, I don't think it means that every car, they'll impact somewhere naturally, but we're in a community and all the schools do that. So I just wanted to throw that out for some consideration. So thank you very much. I appreciate it very much.
I'm sure we may have more questions.
Well, and I
Hold on, just one minute. I'm going to
you have
have
one
you
more
announce yourself first so we can get you on record.
Okay.
We'll call you back if we have any other questions.
Okay, that
Thank
sounds
you.
great.
Did you want to just state your name and address for the record, please?
Jill Carasso, 735 Crest Drive. So I'm probably the biggest opponent that comes to the meetings about this, but I have a lot of neighbors that also are. And so, as I said before, I am.
Could you talk into the microphone? We're
Sorry.
recording this.
I am very concerned about this. And at the same time, as a parent who has kids who go to school who are walkers and ride their bikes, I understand the issue with safety as well. I guess my biggest concern is the fact that why does it have to be all day? Why does it have to be 9 to 4? And as I stated before, when you go and drive past any school in Cary, it's the same situation. Go to Three Oaks. It's a nightmare. It's a nightmare. Go to the high school. I leave to go to the junior high, and Three Oaks is backed up to almost the library for kids trying to get to the high school. Go to Three Oaks at 8:30. People can't even turn into the school because the traffic is backed up. And I guess my biggest thing is that my neighborhood and my street are going to be affected because of a situation that happens within a 20-minute time span. And it sounds like the morning isn't even the issue. So for 20 minutes of the day, we're going to push more traffic down my street that is already a nightmare because I have so many people that cut through. I have the high school kids that cut through. I have the people that cut through to go to 14. And I know it's easy for someone to say it's not that much traffic when you don't live there. But when you live there and had 15 years ago when my husband bought this house, you don't realize when you're buying a house and you're there and you don't realize what a traffic pattern is going to be. I'm not from Cary. So when we moved there, I didn't realize that I was going to have constant traffic. And some of the biggest offenders are my neighbors. I mean, I've had to call the cops on neighbors because I have this kid that lives down the street from me that thinks it's okay to drive 45 miles an hour, up and down the street. And so I just feel like for such a short period of time that the school is dealing with the issue to now affect an entire neighborhood, because it affects Mayfair. It affects that neighborhood, and it's not just my street. People are going to cut down Margaret. They're going to cut down James, which isn't Mayfair, but all of these other side streets, which are a residential street, we're going to push more traffic onto versus keeping them on a main road. And I guess my thing is that if people are doing illegal things in drop-off at 20 minutes, then you know what? If you put a cop there for 2 weeks and you give a lot of tickets, guess what? The people who take that road almost every day because that's how they go to work or whatever it is, they're probably not going to do the same offense again because the law is being enforced. And I just, my kids walk. I already struggle with even letting my kids cross my street because when you come up the hill, you can't see the cars. So I guess my other thing would be that if you go through with this and you put the no left turn in for an all day, and I said this at the last meeting, my request would be to not allow then, because all of that traffic comes down my street. You can go to Toka when they are getting out, and my street will back up with traffic. I'm about the 6th or 7th house in from Three Oaks. The traffic will back up to my driveway. So then I would request that they can't come down my street. And when the 5-6 building was open, a no left turn was put in to reduce the traffic on Crest. And then they had to come up first and go around. So if you're going to direct all the traffic to come down my street, then I would request that they have to go around and then go up the other direction. Because then that would alleviate then some of the traffic that I have. Because we have that school getting out and going to school at the same time that I have Oak Knoll and Three Oaks. So I have 3 schools now full of traffic that are utilizing my neighborhood. And again, I get that it's, and I don't want kids to be unsafe. I don't want anything to happen, but it's such a short period of time to now affect an entire neighborhood for all day, every day. Because you're not talking just during school. You're talking about the district rents those buildings out. You're talking about when kids have basketball. You're talking about all the athletic stuff that goes on when they rent those buildings. That is every single person that goes into that building. And so I'm still against it. And I will be forever. So
Jill, can I ask you a question?
Yes.
What's your address? I'm just trying to picture in my mind.
735 Crest Drive. So if you come in off of Three Oaks, I'm either like the 6th or 7th house, I back up to the power lines.
Okay.
So I T basically Margaret Terrace, and then like Margaret Terrace is here, there's my neighbor, and then I'm right here.
Okay.
So I get a brunt of the traffic, and I get all the people that even come up Margaret Terrace. I mean, again, if you don't live in that neighborhood, I don't think you realize how much the traffic is. I mean, Lisa Rupp's my neighbor, you know, she's right across from me. Her front of the house, isn't it? But I mean, you see it. And it's just, I don't know, and I know it's not every car that's coming through because Oak Knoll is the whole entire community. So you have Deer Path, you have Briargate, you have it. But it's a lot. And I have young kids, and I mean, there's a lot of young kids in our neighborhood, and kids are out playing, and they're riding their bikes, and they walk to school, and, you know, it's just, I've been dealing with it for 15 years. I've been fighting the traffic on my street for probably about 12 years. So when I heard this, it was just like, oh, you know, I don't want the extra traffic. So.
Thank you.
Can I ask you the same thing that what would be your best case scenario on this?
I understand what she's saying about the traffic flow. So I guess instead of making it a whole day, then limit it, maybe just do the afternoon where she's saying is the problem. But I understand that, because then how do you say, I mean, but when you go and you can see no left turns, and they say, I mean, what street is it? Right across from the BP gas station by that funeral home.
Yeah.
Park. Your left turn is limited from 8 to 9 or whatever the time is. So you have to have a bigger signage. I mean, I know you guys talked about a left turn lane, which I know would cost the village a lot of money, but that would alleviate a lot of the problems, because then if someone's sitting in a left turn, then people can bypass because you have a left turn. And I know that financially, you know, I don't crunch the numbers. I'm not, you know, the gentleman in this position. That's not my job. But, you know, I just don't see why it needs to be for the whole day. I understand what she's saying, that in the middle of the day, which, you know, Mrs. Cavelli asked, why does it have to be that? And I get she's saying for consistency, but really then why does it need to be limited? If there's no problem during that time frame, then why restrict it? So I guess my biggest thing would be to, you know, restrict it during the busy time. And so if that is the afternoon, you know, then have it be, you know, if you can put a sign that says no left turn from this time. I mean, it's still going to push the traffic down my street. But for it to be all day long, that for sure I don't understand. And trust me, I have anxiety when I go into Three Oaks parking lot. I get it as a parent. I get it as the whole thing. I'm also the parent who goes and sits there for 25 minutes ahead of time, because I don't want to be stuck on Three Oaks for 20 minutes trying to get in either. But there's parents who also choose not to do that. So a lot of it is also dealing with the parents and not also making adjustments to making things easier either. You know, like I said, I work at the junior high. I am out there every single Tuesday. That is my bus duty. I direct traffic. I make sure the traffic's going. I make sure parents are doing what they're supposed to do. And I get it as a teacher or as an administrator, it's not easy. And there are parents who don't want to listen, because we deal with it all the time. I see it in the Three Oaks parking lot all the time. But I just feel it's like you're pushing traffic off of a main road into neighborhoods, and I don't agree with that. So.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
Did you have something you wanted to, could you just tell us your name and address, please?
Sure. I'm Amanda Schneider. I'm 6911 Hickory Nut Grove Road. So if you, just to orient you, that is straight down Three Oaks, past Rawson Bridge, take the next left, and we're up by the trail parking. So I am a lucky parent of 3 boys, right back here, that all go to 3 different schools. So some by our choice. So we're district for Deer Path. We have a second grader in dual language, so he's at Three Oaks. And then my little one is at Oak Knoll this year. So we are a unique family that kind of won the lottery in how we ended up. And so we see pick up and drop off at all of these schools. And also respectfully, Jill is a good friend of mine, so we're going to have something else to talk about at cocktail parties after this. But So I do have to say that I see pickup and drop off at all three schools. Two of my sons are bused, but because my oldest is a competitive swimmer and because now the buses go from Three Oaks to Oak Knoll, it takes too long. My middle son is on the bus for 45 minutes, so we have to pick up from Oak Knoll and then Three Oaks in order to get our other son off the bus at the end of our driveway to get to swim every day, 5 days a week. So kind of that's the arrangement that we go through. So I do share a concern about this pickup. And having seen this at all schools, there is backup at all schools, but sorry, Oak Knoll is the worst. It is a safety concern, and I have not been shy about my opinions about this, and the reason I'm standing here today is because I've had 3 incidents myself that have terrified me as a parent. Some about my own children, and one was I almost ran over somebody else's kid. So I want to tell you those 3 stories right now. The first one was I was trying to hurry because I have to get through this whole crazy pickup routine because my son is not on an IEP, so we are not eligible for busing. If he was, I would take advantage of that in a minute. He would have no problem getting on the bus, but we are not eligible. So I'm in the parking lot, and I would actually disagree. I think a lot of parents are not parking now, sorry, because if you have to get out to another school, you can get blocked in by these kindergarten parents. So I try not to park right now because everybody blocks everybody in. So I have to pull out to go forward. And I think anytime you have preschoolers holding mom's hand, that time I almost ran over someone else's kid. I was trying to hurry, which I know I've been told not to, but I was trying to hurry, and somebody ran away from mom and ran behind my car. So terrifying. As a parent, I couldn't live if I had someone else's kid. The second one was a situation where, as you see on the diagram, cars were backed up. I actually couldn't turn in, and at this point it was so backed up, and it was about quarter after. They start releasing the kids, I think, around 10 after. So I'm still sitting on the street. I'd been sitting on the street for 5-10 minutes, like it was really backed up that day. So I ended up parking on this side and walking across the street, and then having to go back through that traffic and cross with my 5-year-old across 2 lanes of traffic because there was nowhere else to park, and at that point I was late. The third one is the one that Ms. Ahern referred to, where someone called the cops. It was not me that called the cops, but I was the front car in that line. So on this day, all the cars were backed up all the way, probably all the way to 14 down this way, like everything was really backed up. I was the lead car with a backup this way. There were buses behind me, all of whom were honking. And then there was somebody trying to get out of St. Peter and Paul. When they tried to get out of St. Peter and Paul, they got frustrated. Everybody's honking both ways. Somebody got frustrated and tried to go around all of the buses, kind of shooting down right as somebody pulled out. And that was the near miss that would have hit my car as well if they had collided. So that's when someone called the cops, and I was right on the front row there. So those are kind of my 3 stories about, like, this is a big issue that needs to be addressed, and I can really appreciate where Jill's coming from with traffic coming down her street, but this is a safety concern for our community. And I guess I am in favor of limiting only during certain hours maybe, and not all day, because I think it's the afternoon that's really a problem. I don't do morning drop-off because we're afternoon preschool right now, but this is a major safety concern that needs some kind of attention from this committee.
And you'd want it restricted for afternoon?
I think restricted for afternoon. Or I love Jill's idea of the left turn lane. I think could make a lot of sense. And I do have to compliment the school because they really have taken action on this in the last couple of weeks. I think it was getting progressively worse with the snow. And I know that they've had teachers out there now, and they're still actively taking suggestions. I was the pink sticker idea also to get people in there, which I think they should make them go back around the block. If they come in without a pink sticker, then they got to go around the block or whatever, would be fine by me. That will teach them to do it. But I'm in favor of something happening here because this is a huge safety concern for our kids.
Thank you.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else that would like to address the committee of the whole about parking? Does anybody here have any questions for any of the
Jenny, is it strictly the IEP kids that have the busing services, or can a kindergartner, if they want to ride the bus, elect to ride the bus without an IEP?
Could you come up to the microphone, please?
Kindergartners go with the same policy as any Cary student. So if you live a mile and a half away from school, you're eligible for busing. Or if you have a dangerous traffic condition that you would prohibit you from walking. So you can't cross 14, for an example. So that's it. So most of our kindergartners are bused. In our preschool, that is where we have that distinction that they're talking about, right? It's only offered to the ARISE, the preschool for all, and children that do have IEPs.
Okay. And then, so the kindergartners they're not getting door-to-door service?
No, they're at bus
They have a
stops.
stop, okay.
Yeah, that's the same.
Okay.
And we actually have 3 buses full of just kindergartners for the district. And then, as people have mentioned, because of dual language also coming from all over the Cary area, we share buses with them. So they do go to Three Oaks first, and then they come down and get our kids. So that's that. If I could make one comment about the time, I wouldn't, if in your opinion it's better to limit it, I would like it morning and afternoon. I just feel that it's important to keep the traffic flow and for people to realize at our high volume times that is, I think it's an easier thing to remember. I think it will provide some consistency for us. I do want to say at Oak Knoll, we do rent at night to CBA basketball. However, I think from everything we've talked about today, any kind of sign would end at 4 o'clock. So it would not impact any renters that we have or anything of that nature. And there was one other thing. I think you mentioned our Briargate parents too coming over. They're really not going to ever come down into your area. And that's, believe it or not, that's our biggest group of kindergartners right now. Deer Path parents could, but as I said, there's other options for cutting over. I think it's a situation where I think we'd like to spread the wealth so that one street isn't impacted. And at Prairie Hill, I was also there many moons ago, we did have the right turn in, and it was actually a right turn out. You couldn't make a left.
Right.
So it was the same request, and it was granted at that point in time.
What are the hours, the main hours in the afternoon? You would be fine with 8 to 9 in the mornings, and what
Yeah.
would it be, from 3 to 4 in the afternoons?
3 to 4 would work fine. Yeah.
You know, as we've all talked about this is new to us. I mean, we typically have had neighborhood schools. We've never really had a community school with the little kids like this. So these are some growing pains that we're all going through. We want to make sure that everybody feels safe coming and going. So, you know, some of the information that we've learned tonight is better for us to help making an informed decision to keep everybody safe. And, you know, I've witnessed watching things, you know, what concerns me too is, you know, the left-hand turn, because you have all the high schoolers coming out too, and then those buses coming down, and it could be like, it's all buses, you know, at one particular, but it's short-lived. They're just passing through, but that only looks like they're getting ready to come into your parking lot, so.
God bless you.
Anybody else have any comments or questions? What is everybody thinking right now?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I would be in favor of restricting the turn in the morning and the afternoon, the right turns from 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. and then 3 p.m. to 4 p.m. And then potentially us revisiting it if they do end up staggering the times, and we revisit it and see if it does make any sort of change in the traffic pattern and alleviates it. Perhaps we can bring it back and see if those signs still need to be there. That'd be what I'd be in favor for.
I agree with Kim.
So Kim, you're saying like a conditional use for the signs, or what are you suggesting?
Well, I don't know if it's actually going to happen, the staggering of times, but I would like to just, the board to consider that, should they ever stagger those times, that this is something we should revisit, especially if there are residents who are concerned about, you know, the traffic affecting their neighborhoods and everything else. But I do sympathize with that parent who was talking about just some of those near misses in the parking lot. And if I had to weigh that over some of the extra traffic in the street, unfortunately, that would just be why I would probably weigh heavier on that testimony with some of those concerns in the parking lot. But I do appreciate what Jill was saying as far as some of the traffic down her road. So if the times were to stagger, so I'm trying to find middle ground for everyone is what I'm trying to do.
I agree. So you'd be in favor, so I think everybody seems to be wanting to tag along on this, from the noddings of the head. So just right in and right out all day?
I would be more in favor of the 8 to 9 and the 3 to 4 when the traffic patterns are heaviest. So that, that the Sunset area and the Crest area doesn't have to deal with the traffic all day long.
Hey, Chief, could I ask you a couple of questions? From your policing.
Enforcement's easy once we, not easy, but it'll be more defined once we sign it or post it. My concern is we're going to restrict left turns, right? We're going to allow right turns in and right turns out.
Right turn out.
So yeah, we're restricting left turns off of southbound First Street, right? Okay, that was my only clarification.
Yes, if I said that wrong, I apologize.
No, you just said restrict, and I didn't know.
From 8 to 9, and then from 3 to 4 in the afternoons.
Right.
And that's something that's doable enforcement-wise.
Well, it's easy to enforce it if they make a left turn in because they're stuck in the parking lot.
Yeah.
They can't get out. So, that's it. And the other part of the equation is, you have 18 months to write the citation, right? So it's not going to be something we're going to be chasing people down for it, but they're going to be stuck. And if we're, there and enforcing it, it'd be relatively easy to enforce it.
Yeah, and I think once that sign goes up, it's just a level of education too, and the school, I'm sure, will send out notices to the parents and make them aware of it, because that will help the police
And
department.
presence, right? Just our presence, because we get voluntary compliance when you see a marked squad car there.
Well, and I think we have to err on the side of safety. I agree totally with what Kim was saying, that we have to make sure that we don't want to enact something after someone gets hurt. We don't want to wait for someone to get hurt and then say, now we need to take action. If we know there's a problem, I think we need to come up with a solution. But in conjunction with that, I agree. I would love for the school district to really take a hard look for next year and look at staggering it. Because that's not going to just help, us from enforcement. We don't want to regulate as much as, as possible because someone's got to enforce it. But it makes it easier for you from a safety standpoint if, it's something new. You didn't know how it's going to work, so it's kind of morphing and you're learning it and you're going to make adjustments as necessary. And it sounds like that's something that's already on the table for you. So I think that should really be pursued, but I would definitely be in favor of the 8 to 9 and the 3 to 4, just for safety.
Trustee Weinhammer?
So do we need to look at signs for St. Peter and Paul as well, or is Oak Knoll fine just having the signs there? Does it need to be looked at from both sides, from the story that Mrs. Schneider was talking about?
Oh, there's,
Sorry.
to get into St. Peter and Paul, you're on the far, you're opposing.
She said that somebody was leaving St. Peter and Paul, or,
That's the exiting.
okay, well, at one of the exits, I guess.
Yeah, that driveway that you're referring to, it's opposite the exit driveway of the school. I
Okay.
believe that's an exit-only driveway. So
Correct.
there's no cars turning in. So there's no need to restrict left turns in because there's no entrance there.
That's what I was
But
saying.
for the exiting traffic, is what you're
Right.
referring to?
But that wasn't school related.
That
Because
was
that school gets no, I know, I'm just
Could I
saying the
ask you to
school,
refrain from comments from back there, please? Thank you.
I'm just saying that the school gets out at like 2:30 and they all have to exit out the back end. They can't come out. Any parents from St. Peter and Paul, their traffic pattern is they have to pick up and come out the back way. They cannot come out that side. If someone's coming out that side, it could be a teacher at 3 o'clock or something like that that's way after school is out. So I'm just saying they have it established, you have to go out that back way.
You can come up to the podium.
Yeah,
I mean, that's where the guy was turning out at.
sure.
And it's not typical, there's not a lot of people, but if you're trying to limit accidents and keep people going that way, I think you kind of have a point.
Has staff observed traffic pulling out of that often? I know we have a resident that saw that one incident, but
Yeah, we have observed counts. We haven't observed, obviously, that particular incident, but there is a nominal amount of cars coming out of that driveway.
That are coming out of the St. Peter and Paul driveway.
And I think when we spoke about this also, that there's an exit out to Eldon from the back of that parking lot from the school, church, more a school than a church. But I think what you're talking about, and I don't have any knowledge of any actual collisions occurring yet. So I guess that's the other part of this equation, is that hasn't occurred yet that I am aware of. But if we're talking about morning, you're wanting to restrict left turns out of the church driveway, making a left-hand turn, just making a right-hand turn only from that same period of time. Is that what you're saying?
That's what I'm asking, is
Yeah.
that, should we do that?
I would suggest that, definitely. But why not have the St. Peter and Paul people abide by the same rules as the opposite side of the street?
Well, I would like to get their opinion on that. If we're going to make a jurisdictional change with traffic that affects their parking and their parishioners, they need to be aware of what is being considered.
Just for a frame of volume of traffic coming out of the driveway, granted, it's a small sample size, just one day observed, but, just 4 days observed, but there are between 10 and 25 cars coming out of that driveway. So it does vary, making that left turn out.
The church?
That's for the full hour
Of the church or the school?
of the church.
Okay.
So not all of them are coming out in that same 20-minute period as the school traffic, but we had it broken down by the hour at least.
Would you say the majority were turning north or south? North would be a left and south would be a right.
It's about an equal distribution.
Okay.
And it varied day to day. Some days it was heavier to the right, some days to the left, some days it was balanced.
Because I think if we did restrict it on the other side also as right turn only during those hours, that would just keep that whole intersection flowing right in, right out, other side right in, up there left in, right out. It would just keep the cogs of the wheels seem to be going.
No, I agree.
So
It wouldn't hurt.
I agree with Chris and Kim.
Getting the through traffic and that restriction from First Street into the school, handling that though, and avoiding the cars stopping at the middle of the intersection, I think that improvement in the traffic flow will help all exiting vehicles, whether they are turning left or right. I believe the school's point, which I don't disagree with, in restricting left out of the school itself, that helps though in that they want to improve the efficiency and get everybody moving out as much as possible and not having to wait for traffic to turn left, because the faster they clear the driveway and get out, the sooner more cars behind them can pull forward and get their children loaded or unloaded to their cars. Whereas on the church side, there's plenty of queuing space with that long drive and that long approach. And the time isn't so much the necessity to get that traffic cleared out of the parking lot because it's not affecting other traffic in the same manner.
I like Kim's idea. I think it would be a good start, and then perhaps revisit it in the future if we need to, if there's still concerns ongoing.
Does the board want us to reach out to St. Peter and Paul as we're putting together an ordinance?
I think if we're considering it, then yeah, I think we should at least get their involvement and feedback on it.
I agree.
Yeah.
So we will continue this on, get some feedback from St. Peter and Paul as well. This is Aaron. Can I ask you to come back up here, please? Just wanted to make sure that we're all on the same page. The discussion's still going to be continuing. Right now, what the board is considering is no left-hand restrictions from 8 to 9 in the morning and from 3 to 4 in the afternoon. So therefore, it would be right hand in and right hand out.
Okay.
And then adding into St. Peter and Paul into the mix on that, we'll notify their staff that these are things that are being contemplated right now, so we have their input in this as well.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah.
And then we'll be in touch with you. But I don't know when we're going to get this
Well,
back on the agenda.
I guess not to delay it, we certainly could bring this forward because it's just a simple ordinance amendment. We could bring this forward to the next village board meeting. During that time, we'd be able to reach out, hopefully, and have some conversations with St. Peter and Paul and bring back further information to the village board.
Yeah, I'd like to see it get going as soon as possible.
I would just say, if I could.
please,
Is
feel free.
okay?
No, no.
Thank you. Okay. I would just say, I would hope, St. Peter and Paul has been a wonderful neighbor to us. They share their parking lot with us because, as you've heard tonight, parking is limited. And when we have parties at our school, they give us their back parking lot. So I don't in any way want to hurt any or jeopardize any relationship. So I hope that when you reach out to them, it's certainly in the spirit of, here's something that we're going to do probably across the street. How would that look to you? I don't think it should be a combined or a connected event necessarily, because I think it is sporadic, that traffic that comes at that time. And if we're always making the right turn out, I think it makes it easier for them, really. So that's my last thought on that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Just want to make sure that you knew where we were.
I am. Thank you very
So
much.
we'll draft an ordinance, bring it to the next village board meeting under items for separate action. And we
Correct.
can make any changes.
I just wanted to remind everyone about the mechanism for an ordinance in terms of once we pass it, it's not enforceable for 10 days. So it has to.
That's a good point.
It's not going to happen overnight, is basically what I'm saying. And yeah, there'll be an educational period, but ordinances are passed and then they have to be enacted for 10 days before they can be enforced.
Just from a signage standpoint, Eric, when would we anticipate, if this is approved, for the sign to get posted?
Yeah, the no left turn sign is probably something we have in stock. It would be the sub plaque that has the time restrictions. That's a custom sign order. So since we don't have a sign shop in-house, we do have to rely on the shipping time of a vendor, which sometimes it varies, but it could be a few weeks or longer for the delivery of that sign too.
Okay.
We'll do our best and bring it back here to the next village board meeting for more discussion.
All right, thank you. Moving on to the review of the 2040 to 2020,
Mayor comment.
2020 and 20, pardon me?
Sorry for interrupting you. Ms. Carasso wanted to ask a question.
Sure, come on up.
So I just want, and I don't know if this would all have to be combined, because no one's addressed then. My concern is that if you approve this, is talking about not allowing TOCA to now turn left into their school and take some of that traffic off my street, make them go up first and come up the other way. So that has not been addressed at all by anyone. So if you're going to push forward with that, I would like to have some feedback about that.
Chief, do you remember when we deactivated that sign?
Yeah, when the building closed. And then as soon
As
as
soon as, when it.
as soon as the 5.6 was pulled out, because I remember when it went in, and it was amazing, and it was awesome because a police officer sat there and made sure no one did it, because then people would UE it, and it was wonderful. And then as soon as the 5.6 building closed, the sign was taken down. I mean, not obviously within a day or two, but in a very short period of time, when District 26 pulled out of there, the left turn sign was pulled out.
Okay, we could revisit that.
So I would just like that addressed a little bit for my suggestion, because that hasn't been discussed at all.
I think it's a good idea.
Thank you for your.
Thank you.
Let's turn it over to Eric and Michael
And Jake?
and Jake.
Mayor, Village Board, before you, this is our 5-year CIP plan. We've done this for the last few years. I think it's been very beneficial for staff and the Village Board to help make decisions. Ultimately, this sets forward our vision for projects for the next 5 years and beyond. So for this evening, we'll be talking about various projects within the departments, all the infrastructure-related projects. And then once we get beyond those projects, we'll talk about the available revenues against expenditures here to have a good discussion about that. The intent of our meeting tonight, we want to inform the Village Board, answer any questions that you have related to any infrastructure projects. We have entered all our infrastructure projects here again for the next 5 years. Want to get feedback from the Village Board that will help shape our budget discussions on March 16th and beyond. No formal decision will be made this evening. We will have some focused discussion related to our road program. So what is a 5-year CIP? This identifies both our current and future capital needs. All the costs within this from the beginning to the end are estimates. We compare those estimated costs to our anticipated revenues. Annual adjustments, as you've seen throughout the previous year's CIP plans, we've made changes to the plan. Priorities change, funding amounts change, and this will continue to be updated on an annual basis. Why do we complete the CIP? This, I think the board is aware, if you go through the slides and you've gone through the presentation the last couple of years, is one of the largest expenditures that we have in our budget. This outlines, again, our multi-year plan for the board, for staff, for our residents. I think it's important for the residents too. Periodically, we get people that ask questions of when is this project going to be completed? When is this road going to be paved? We have this information available on our website. We're able to respond to residents of when we have projects planned. The CIP is also important because we're able to prioritize our most important projects. We have a limited amount of revenues here at the village, and we need to focus on the projects that are high priorities. The CIP is also a planning tool, so we're able to plan, design, and construct projects. Many of our projects you'll see run over multiple fiscal years, so that allows us to complete that plan, excuse me, the plan, design, and construction. This, the CIP gives guidance to help with future budgets, ensures our village infrastructure is maintained in a timely fashion. We also like to limit surprise emergency expenditures. And then finally, it's looked on favorably by ratings agencies. So we'll start with the Administration Community Development departments. You can see here, I'm not going to go through every project on this slide, and we'll have numerous other slides. But just talking in items that we have for next fiscal year, we have upgrades to our IT infrastructure and GIS, multi-year projects related to that, and then also our building permit system. We're looking to move on from MSI, archaic system, not only for finance, but also for the building department. MSI will transition out of them for finance through an agreement with Lauterbach and Amon. We do need to have a separate system, though, for our building department. Are there any questions related to projects that are on this slide? Fleet and equipment. The police department, various items within the police department, mobile data computers, we replace on periodic 5-year schedule, and then body worn cams we have on one of the out years. Our consolidated training facility with McHenry County, the chief update the board on the status of that project. That was in the budget last year, didn't come to fruition last year, but we are budgeting to plan to assist with that project this coming year.
Yeah, this is a project that has been basically spearheaded by McHenry County Sheriff, who has indicated that they would dedicate some significant funding to it, as well as 5 different other agencies that were interested in it: Cary Police Department, or Cary Village of Cary, Village of Algonquin, Village of Huntley, Village of Lake in the Hills, and now the city of McHenry is now interested in this. And what this is initially where we're looking at a firearms range, because right now Algonquin and Cary share the quarry, and we do our training out there at Meyer Material at Clausen and 31. However, what I've experienced and what Chief Bucci has in Algonquin is that, especially when we're out there shooting, we tend to cause complaints from Algonquin residents to the village of Algonquin in regards to the report or the gunfire that is occurring because of the training. It became particularly heightened after the Las Vegas mass shooting. I had residents from Fox Trails call me and indicate they were not happy with having to hear a firearm report from us training out there due to the incident that occurred in Las Vegas. And this also comes as a initiative because the county administrator and the village administrators had gotten together and wanted to find areas where we could pool our resources and consolidate and have something that everyone could use that not everyone has to build their own. And it's particularly timely for us right now because we're in the design phase or research phase for a facility. And if there's a facility that's already built in use, then we don't have to include that element in a building that we're building, number one. And number two, particularly firearms ranges, I've had experience with those, and they tend to have a little bit of maintenance addressed or, involved with them in terms of filters and trap, the bullet trap. You have to mine it, depending on the type of bullet trap they use and things of that nature. We were looking at potentially a site in just outside of Woodstock in Heartland. It's an unincorporated area. The county has land there, but we're also exploring other options. And in fact, we're going to have another meeting about this here, March 6th, with all the participants in this. So it's something that we're moving forward on. The $100,000 is kind of a ballpark figure in regards to everyone, and it's more or less something that is on the lines of like a CCOM, where there's intergovernmental agreements for such a facility. I'd be happy to take any questions if you have any questions in regards to that.
Are there any other questions about this slide? So police vehicles, we have a very detailed multi-year plan for all our fleet within the Village of Cary. Over the next couple of years, we have police vehicles that are scheduled for replacement. This coming fiscal year, we have 3 vehicles that are highlighted on this page. We want to make sure our police officers, all employees, have reliable, good equipment to be able to do their jobs effectively. We saw it was very evident when the temperature dipped below 25 below. Some equipment didn't work. We need to make sure that all departments have reliable equipment. So we've got a couple purchases coming up here this fiscal year. Overall, are there any questions related to police vehicles?
Why would you put money towards the 2016 and then there's the 2015s that would come later?
Partially because these, and you'll see in the subsequent slides, these patrol vehicles that are brought out of service, they're brought out at a level where there's still some life left, maybe not at the reliability needs for the police department in a patrol situation, but for administrative, non-patrol police, public works, community development. So those vehicles will be actually replacing other hand-me-downs in those departments that have reached or surpassed their usable life. And some of these vehicles, those 2016 models in particular, the officer in charge, I believe, or the sergeants drive those vehicles. So those are actually run every day, 24/7. So the mileages, even though they're only a few years old, are already substantial.
Okay.
It's a good question. We do some of it by design. You look at that bottom pickup, for example, that's going to be transferred to Public Works. So we try to do our best with moving vehicles around and getting the most use that we can out of them. There you go. Yeah. So this is a slide Eric was mentioning here. These are some of the vehicles that are going to be surplused.
So the 16 miles are going to replace some 2010s and 2009 models.
And then moving on from staying within fleets or fleet and equipment, but moving on to Public Works. Again, this paints a broader picture of vehicles within the Public Works Department, light duty, that are going to be surplused. 2 of them planned for next year. And then these are medium duty trucks. This is within Water and Sanitation Fund. We've got a couple items over the next fiscal year that are planned to be purchased. Please stop me if you have any questions. Again, continuing on to...
Jake, I have, what do you mean by the 2000 Chevy Astro van surplus? What does that mean? You're getting rid of it?
Auction.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Yep.
And then the van that you see here, the 2015 Transit Connect van, will be transferred from the wastewater or the water division over to the mechanic to replace that old van.
Okay, and then if we could just go back to the other one. Chris brought up the 2016 and then fiscal year 1920, 40,000. What does that mean? 40,000 with the asterisks and then 40,000 with the 2 asterisks? I don't understand what that dollar amount means. That we're going to buy another one to replace that?
Yes, so for Unit 532, a new full-size Ford Transit van would be purchased to replace the loss of the Transit Connect that gets transferred to the mechanic.
But if you go back to the police vehicle,
Oh, yeah. It was just kind of highlighting.
2016,
Right,
the two up there at the top, so we're moving those into the fleet to be used for something
Yeah.
else
Right.
within the village of
Yes.
Cary, but we're going to spend 40,000 on another one.
Right.
Okay.
40,000 buys a new patrol vehicle, and then that old unit goes to, in this case, the school resource officer and the detective.
Okay.
You're talking about this slide, trustee Kraus, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Police
yeah,
vehicles.
Yep, yep.
And then the Ford, the truck, where is that going? 'Cause
That
you
goes
said
to
they
Public
don't really
Works.
like the truck too much.
We'll caveat that.
It might be
They
better just to
do
sell
with
it outright.
the new model that comes out.
Actually,
We will be using this.
yeah,
We will be
actually,
using this.
I
we
thought they'd be
purchased it.
fighting over it, but
No,
nobody really
they do
likes it.
use it, and Officer Signar uses it during the day, but the issue was this, is that they didn't offer it as a police package until this year. So it's a fleet truck now. We bought it 1 year too soon, is basically what happened. But it was always purchased with the intent that it would go to the superintendent of streets when we were done with it.
Okay.
So now it's offered as a police package, and I can buy a power seat now without having to make it an XLT or an improved package. So that's why it'll be purchased again this year, because then I'll have a power seat, because we have varying body types that drive the vehicle, and I can purchase a truck that is a police vehicle versus a fleet vehicle. So it'll go to the street superintendent and replace the Expedition that needs to come out of service.
Okay.
Yeah, he's using, the superintendent right now is using an old Expedition that previously used to be a police vehicle many, many years ago.
But having a pickup truck is worthwhile. Okay.
Yeah.
Because then we don't have to wait for Public Works to come pick up a bike or something like that.
Oh, okay, okay.
Thank you for stopping us. Let's see.
Medium duty trucks.
Heavy-duty vehicles, just this last year, we bought a new plow truck, so we're doing pretty good. We're in good shape related to our heavy-duty pickups. So those, you'll see more in the out years. Are there any questions about heavy-duty trucks? Other heavy equipment, this Public Works related still. We've got a couple items, one specifically here next year that's going to be surplused, and then a backhoe in the out years.
And the sweeper that is being surplus is not being replaced. So that is a legacy product that literally probably will not be able to be servicing anything at all, so.
Which we're happy about. So facilities, moving on to our Village Hall and Police Department. We've talked about this in our previous CIP discussions here at the Village Hall and some of the challenges that we have in this building. So going forward, this coming fiscal year, we have about $20,000 in maintenance items that we've included. We've pushed many of these repairs or items that should be addressed to some of the out years. As the board is aware that we currently have that RFQ out to get an architect on board. We want to have that architect help provide us a little bit of guidance, so we're not just going into this blindly and trying to fix some of these things, but have a professional give us some guidance on how we and what I guess upgrades we should make in the near term. So this next fiscal year, it's approximately $20,000 for maintenance items. Long term, we're looking at about 5 years commitment of $830,000 just for long-term maintenance with our current facility. So are there questions related to the police or Village Hall facility that we're in? And then here's the potential, again, haven't made any decisions yet, but if we go through the process for a new facility, there's a $40,000 for planning, $500,000 approximately for design, $9 million for construction. And again, these are purely estimates. All these numbers are our best guesses for how much this may cost. Moving on to other facilities within the Village of Cary. Our senior center building, we don't have anything planned for the next fiscal year. We do have a whole series of maintenance items that are coming up. It will be important for us at some point to have a discussion about the senior center with the village board to decide what we may want to do, what the vision might be for that site going forward. I don't know exactly how long the Park District will plan on having their senior operations there. I know long-term, I don't think that is their plan, and they're probably going to look at some other sites to host our growing senior population. Public Works Building, we are fortunate that the Public Works Building is newer than the Village Hall that we're in right now, albeit we have to make improvements and ongoing maintenance to all of our buildings. So within the Public Works Building, we've got some rather significant costs here. Maintenance costs related to some paving within the facility in the back there of our complex, and then ongoing maintenance related to the garage floor. Eric's also recommending a larger generator here. And Eric, if you could just give an overview of that generator, because I understand the sticker shock behind a $100,000 generator, but that is important for our operations.
Certainly. As Mr. DeBreck mentioned, our Public Works facility is our newest building, but it was constructed in 2002, so it is going on 17 years. And for whatever reason, at the time with the planning of that facility, a generator for backup power was not considered or installed. So currently, in the event of an extended power loss, we're unable to operate our fuel pumps, our lifts, our vehicle maintenance, and also heating, computers, and telephones all go down when in the event of a power outage. We've experienced small outages here and there the last couple of years in my tenure, but the concern is that in a longer event, that in order to maintain certain operations necessary during those times, backup power would be beneficial for maintaining those services. So we have gotten a general high-level conceptual budget number, and this is for not just providing the generator, but the electrical and mechanical modifications necessary to connect the generator to the current equipment. One of the big things to note is that the heating and ventilation air conditioning system in that building is all electric. It does not run on gas, so that is another element in the power needs there.
Any questions about the senior center or Public Works Building?
How is the roof on the senior center? Have we had that looked at?
I think it was replaced plus or minus 7 years ago.
Okay.
I think the roof is in pretty good shape. The Park District, there was a joint partnership between the Village and Park District, and a project that rebuilt and did a little tuck pointing to the chimneys, and at the same time the roof was replaced. So plus or minus 6-7 years, I think, is my guess.
Yeah, in our reserve study, the senior center roof wasn't noted for major maintenance until 2031, so it is an out year.
Our Metro building, I think everyone's well aware of this project. It's interesting to look at these pictures just from past to where we're going to get to here in present day. So the expenditures related to our Metro improvements, as the board is aware, the construction is ongoing right now. We've been held up with just due to the weather, ultimately. We still have additional work that the Union Pacific Railroad is going to be completing on that pedestrian crossing, that northwest pedestrian crossing on the platform. So these items are planned to be completed this coming calendar year. We expect the station probably be finished sometime this summer, early fall. We have additional items related to the Metro station that we have on the out years. Are there any questions that the board has related to the Metro station?
And these funds are coming out of the grant?
These are coming out of the parking fund, and there is a grant, absolutely. And we'll talk later once we get to the all-encompassing slide about anticipated revenues and expenditures related to the parking fund and all funds.
And just to confirm that we're not looking to demo the current building until 2022?
Yeah, we need to look at that right now. It's kind of in flux. There's still conversations that have to occur with Union Pacific. So that hasn't been fleshed out of an exact time frame of when that building is going to be demoed.
Okay.
Jake, I'd like a breakdown of what the funds are coming from the grant versus what we're taking out of the parking fund to pay for the Metro station. eventually?
Yeah, absolutely. We can get more detailed information on that. The grant, just, I guess, right now, since we're talking about it, is a $2 million grant that Metro was able to secure through the federal government. The village obviously has a contribution here too, and we'll get to that in the slide, and we can get you some more information behind the scenes then too, Trustee Kraus. Our Meyer Material, the lake facility, there's certainly going to be ongoing maintenance every year in perpetuity as long as the Village of Cary is owning that property. We have planned for the immediate next fiscal year, mowing maintenance, path maintenance. We'll be doing some fish stocking as well out there. We have planned geese control, Phragmites, which is an invasive weed too. So hopefully as we take this property over, you'll see some of these costs related to maintenance and also the build out of the site be reduced over time. These are the improvements that we have planned for next year. As the board is aware, we discussed the beach planning study. We included dollars for that. We have dollars available for both boat and kayak launch, signage out there, and then also for park structures. Any questions related to the lake facility?
Are these funds coming out of the Land Conservancy Fund?
Yep, good question. They are coming out of Land Conservancy Fund. So infrastructure and capital maintenance, Eric's going to walk us through next few projects here.
Thank you, Jake. The map before you on the screen now just highlights some of the layouts and locations of some of the roadway projects that are either going to be in construction or design for the next fiscal year. The areas in red are the construction locations, and then I'll go into detail on the specifics of those. And the blue are going to be in design for construction the following year. The first one that was shown on that map is the Three Oaks Road improvement. The board has been a part of this one for quite some time. Just wrapping up phase 2 design now. Or finished up phase 2 design. It's gone to bid and we'll start this summer. This project is being paid for with the local share from the MFT funds, and also a Highway Safety Improvement Program grant. So that gives us nearly $1.6 million out of this $2 million project. This screen is the result of a pavement management analysis that was conducted by staff and a consultant this past fiscal year. So the fruits of this labor are the map you see here. Currently, as of the latest assessment, our network pavement condition index, which is the number we utilize to measure the quality of our roadways. You can see there the legend has the different color coding from anywhere from a failed roadway, which is impassable, on up to a brand new roadway, which will have a PCI score of 100. So the network average of all of our streets right now is just around 70, which puts us right on the line between the satisfactory and fair conditions. So as a network average, as a whole, our roads right now are currently in very good shape. However, everyone knows roads deteriorate over time. The weather, especially weather like this winter, when you have heavy freeze-thaw cycles of temperature shifts going from 50 degrees down to negative 30 degrees in a matter of weeks, does wreak havoc on our pavements. And even as natural conditions will deteriorate those roadways. So we do need to have some attention paid to those roads. You see here the analysis also broke down the percentages of our roads that are in each category. So you can see about a fourth of our roads are in each of the high scoring groups, the yellows and the greens there. And then the bottom portions, 17% roughly in the poor condition, or 8% the very poor, and a sliver there in the serious condition. This graph here is an important one just for us to realize the effects of our annual roadway fuel tax and how that relates to the conditions of our roads down several years. We receive approximately $450,000 to $470,000 per year in motor fuel tax funds, or MFT funds. So with that, we had the analysis consider 5 different scenarios here. The first one, in orange on the bottom there, is if we were not to devote any money at all to a road program, what the condition of our roadway network would do over time. So right now, we're just under 70 in the network PCI. As you can see, in about 20 years, we would be down in the bottom end of the poor range with a PCI average of a little over 40. The middle group there, the blue and the red lines, that is mirroring approximately what our current program is. Our past practices have been to apply our MFT funds to either a road program every year of about $450,000, or we go every other year occasionally and combine those funds into a balance of about $900,000 with the aim of getting better unit costs with a bigger program bid at one time. So as you can see, doing either of those scenarios has approximately the same impact on our road conditions. So as we continue what we're doing now, our network average, despite our best efforts at that amount of money, will decline into the poor range by 2029. And then kind of flipping around the other end, if we were trying to maintain PCI net average where we're at, and we wanted to stay where we're at, we asked the analysis in the program, what level of funding would it take to maintain this current situation for a network average? And that analysis resulted in approximately $1.13 million per year would be needed to keep our average the same over the next 20 years. And then the last scenario is to meet or actually improve and take care of all of our worst first, so all the worst condition roads right away or as fast as possible, and maintain and improve that PCI. That's just more of a exercise just to give a ceiling. That's kind of the max and min of a road program and its effects. That was about $1.5 million per year to actually enhance our road network.
I think this is one of the most important slides that we have in the whole presentation. It's very telling. We have to work as a group here to come up with other funding sources than just our MFT revenue to pay for the roads. You can see if we just continue as is and put dollars, the $450,000 plus or minus that we get, our roads in 10 years are going to deteriorate. They're going to continue to deteriorate. There's pressure too on our MFT funds. Currently, we don't use salt. We don't use MFT funds to pay for salt. That is part of the general fund budget. As there's more pressure put on our general fund budget, we may need to look at other avenues to pay for things such as salt, which may even put more stresses on this. So we need to continue to work this problem. It's a challenge, and work jointly.
So these projections don't include any grant monies, do they?
Correct. Okay. And with the way the grant programs are structured, obviously they're all competitive and have become more competitive over the years. Luckily, we've been very successful in getting our share. But the grants that are out there, the current programs that are out there, they will typically only apply to collector roadways that are of a regional significance, like our Three Oaks Road project. Strictly resurfacing and trying to get a grant just to resurface an existing residential street, they're either not eligible in the grant programs or would score so low that it's not likely to secure those. But I would, and we will continue to keep our eye out for trying to get a lot of our major roadways paid for with outside money. And this kind of details the next 5 years for the road program. So for fiscal year 1920, you can see that our current allocation will put all of our money for this fiscal year into the local share for Three Oaks Road. And then we will have a $25,000 design allotment to get the roads that we're going to resurface in the following year prepared. And then this is the current tentative list of streets, subject to obviously the unit costs we achieved through the bid process. But these are the roads through the pavement analysis that, based on condition and proximity to each other, to make sure that the bidders aren't bouncing around for a little stretch of roadway all over the village, to make sure we optimize the best cost that we can receive. This is the tentative program for the next 5 years. And then visually on the map, Three Oaks Road is in purple there. The years for fiscal year, actually that would be calendar year 2020 would be in the orange, and then for 2022 would be in the green. Recent change from the board was to move some of our regular annual road maintenance into our capital fund. So the allotment for those tasks are summarized in that pie chart there, things like crack filling and sealing, street repairs for potholes, catch basins and so forth, pavement markings and striping with the thermoplastic program, asphalt patching, sidewalk cutting, and sidewalk and curb replacement, as well as some bike path maintenance and seal coating. The bar chart there just shows kind of a snapshot of our sidewalk maintenance program, which I'll go into more detail in a second. But we, as part of our assessment of the roadways, we also did a village-wide snapshot of the conditions of sidewalks as well. So we're able to identify all the locations that had different severities of either displacements or surface distress. That combined with the locations that are reported to us by residents and by staff. So our current backlog as of the end of 17, when the survey was conducted, is about 780 known locations that need to be repaired, just to some degree. With the current funding of approximately $40,000 to $50,000 per year that we allocate towards remove and replacement, we can typically do about, at the current unit cost, about 178 locations or so. And we usually anticipate about 50 plus or minus new locations reported by the residents each year. So you can see our current progress does chip away at that backlog, but it does take some time and gives time for new ones to occur as well. It's a little hard to see on at this scale, but the dots represent the different locations from the survey as well as the severity. Most of our locations are on the low severity or the watch list. So those are displacements that are less than an inch and a half in displacement. But we do have several locations in the moderate to high. Those are the ones that we typically aim to hit each year in our program with the resources we have. But also of note in that table, our funding level typically stays constant, but unit costs do increase every couple of years at least, if not every year. So our buying power, number of locations that we can treat each year does go down as time goes on. And that's unique to everyone in the business, not just Cary.
Eric, could you just go over the tree replacement program real quick?
Oh, sure.
What do we have in place
Sorry, I
currently?
skipped that. Thank you. It's also part of our road maintenance is the Parkway Tree Replacement Program. The past 5 years, we've had an aggressive march towards replacing the trees that were lost, the ash trees that were lost to the emerald ash borer. So as of this current fiscal year, we are at the tail end of that program with just I won't say a handful, but a small amount left in the program to complete in that process. So we reduced last year's request, an approved budget of $60,000 for tree replacement down to $20,000. And then moving forward, $10,000 will approximately meet our needs for just new trees that have to be removed due to disease or storms and so forth.
Do we cover the total cost of the tree, or is it a 50-50?
That is total cost.
Total, okay. And is it first come, first served? Or do we identify who's going to be replaced? My neighbor was asking me.
Yes, with the previous program, we did it by zone as far as the areas that were kind of the worst hit, kind of with a model of a trees lost per block basis. But moving forward, we would typically try to do it in order received.
So if you had a maple tree taken down because it was just old, do we replace that free of cost, or would that be something that it would be?
As long as it's the location of the existing tree is in a spot that's still appropriate. Some existing trees obviously are too close to sidewalks or driveways or fire hydrants and light poles, things like that. But yeah, if it is still in a good spot and eligible for replacement, it does get added to our list for full replacement at no cost to the resident. But it may take a few years, even with the current backlog moving forward. But obviously not as long of a time as the EAB replacements, which took up to 5 years.
Thank you.
Salt, as we talked about earlier this evening, this summary just shows the historic unit costs from the various bidding processes that we've had. We have switched from the State of Illinois Central Management Services joint bid to a more localized county-based bid with Lake County, and we're also exploring opportunities with McHenry County as well, and even trying to see if there's any interest in both counties perhaps working together and getting that buying power combined. As those talks progress, though, we do have some good unit prices with our current contracts. Historic road salt used, you see there, it does vary by season. This year, the second bar to the right, we are projecting probably the highest usage of salt we've had in many years. I shared with the board in the weekly report kind of a stat we saw from a meteorologist in Chicago as of Valentine's Day. So for the whole calendar year of 2019, we only had 6 days in the whole year that had no rain or snow.
Right.
So only 6 precipitation-free days in Chicago. So it kind of gives you the magnitude. I think it was 87% of the calendar year has been raining or snowing, hence the use of salt.
This is a general fund item. We included it here within the capital presentation just from a timeliness perspective. We thought it was good information to share with the village board.
This is a new program that we wanted to bring the attention to the village board on. This is the corridor between South Rawson Bridge and I believe it's the neighborhood called the Pines. There's a half right-of-way that exists if you were to travel south on Rawson Bridge Road towards Three Oaks. It was probably reserved at the time for that road to have a straight alignment heading southward. However, for whatever reason, the development occurred. The road was swung to the east, so leaving this half right-of-way. There's no utilities back there, so it really doesn't have any drainage or utility function for the village. It's just property that we happen to own and be responsible for maintenance on. It's very heavily wooded and with very mature trees. So right now, there are actually a couple of trees out there that have fallen or probably are likely to fall in the near future. So we're recommending that we allocate some dollars to an outside contractor to address the removal of those trees. They're of a size and the constraints of that half narrow corridor there that our equipment is not capable of doing that work. So we do need to look to outsource that. I'm proposing considering it in maybe a 3-year process, although getting some quotes from different contractors, it is possible to do it all at one time, just over maybe an entire season. So those are approximate numbers of what that might take. Obviously, if the tree is fallen or in danger of falling, we, as the property owner, have some responsibility there. But we do want to just let the board know here's a new expense that we should probably look at considering.
So I understand, Eric, that says village property, it's in an easement. Do the neighbors have any say with the mature trees and the privacy if they want to keep them?
We try to get the feedback, but obviously once a tree is identified that it might fall and cause some damage or some harm, since it is our property and it's the property owner, obviously we have some responsibilities there. If it were an easement situation where the property owner owned the land and we just had rights to it, obviously that would be a little bit different. But in this case, we are the property owner.
There are some challenges too, just to get equipment back there. And so we may have to remove trees to get to a tree that needs to be removed. So I understand that it may not be a perfect situation for residents that live back there, but it is Village of Cary right away. And we ultimately have the responsibility to maintain it.
So, I don't know if this is still valid or not, but I had heard in the past that residents were able to go ahead and have the opportunity to possibly purchase that easement spot because it was supposed to be a bike trail. If I'm understanding correctly, would you guys still possibly give those residents the choice to purchase that extra property from the village?
That's obviously an option, but it would have to be a scenario where all the different properties and all the property was purchased. the lights, and then in-house with current staff, we would be able to install all those lights over a 3-year period. And as we do the installations, we get about $13,000 back per year. So it is a little bit more of an upfront cost and a program, obviously, for us to incorporate with our staff over the summer months. But it is a substantial rebate that we'd be eligible for. So to be able to get all those lights taken care of for only a fraction of the cost is something we thought we would see if the board had interest in us considering. And on top of the rebate cost, just for the purchase of the materials, the energy savings alone will also result in about $9,000 per year in just energy costs that the village incurs for powering those streetlights that exist now.
Just real quick, going back to that forestry maintenance page, Trustee McAlpine said that she had talked to the neighbors there and that they stated that they were concerned that their taxes would go up. I mean, it's just additional land. How much could their taxes go up? It's not, in addition to their home.
It is additional acreage, though, not being
It's a full,
tax person, but it probably is a valid concern, but I don't know the
Mike, can you
extent of it.
elaborate on that, please?
yeah, because there are neighbors on Red Cypress who purchased and extended their lot back, and that was not one of their concerns. So I'm just wondering how much.
I think it kind of comes down to the individual in terms of the impact on their budget. Some people look at the benefit of gaining the additional land as more than offsetting what the additional property taxes. There would be property tax associated with it. It's hard to determine exactly how much because I don't know the value that would be placed on it by the assessor. I wouldn't consider it to be significant,
Yeah, that's what I thought.
but it would be a cost that somebody'd have to consider.
I mean, when you look
The
at the
other thing
property
they'd have to
too.
consider is they'd have to remove the trees should something fall. So depending on where those trees are that are coming down, that may be a
I
determination.
mean, it is a
And
selling point when you go to resell the house too. So,
again, depending on the individual.
right.
Some people don't mind the maintenance, other people try to run away from the maintenance.
Right.
How does the board feel about our streetlight replacement here, converting to LED? There's definitely some cost savings with that and trying to implement green infrastructure whenever we can.
I think it's great
Yeah, from a financial standpoint.
from everything, from a green standpoint, from a financial standpoint. So I applaud you. That's fantastic, the net savings.
I like it as well. I don't see any negatives to it, so likewise.
Jake, what do we, Public Works, our electricity is free there due to the aggregation, right? So
I believe at Public Works, right? Or no?
It's for certain buildings in our public works, in our village operations. So the village hall and the public works garage building, the power is not charged. The cost for the power is not charged.
The main building, yeah.
The street lights are not part of that.
Yeah, no.
Right.
No, we wish they were. Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of our wells and the treatment plant are not part of that umbrella, unfortunately.
Yeah, the lights cost $60,000 plus or minus.
It's what we currently budget, yes.
Yeah.
Another new project for consideration is something staff's been looking at for a little bit, and I believe a resident actually came to the village board recently and spoke on this particular matter. This is Route 14 at West Main Street. This is the curve that goes through town where Northwest Highway changes into Crystal Street. The current issue is that with the people unfamiliar with the area, there tends to be some confusion into which lane is utilized for which movement. The fact that West Main Street, as you're traveling westbound on Route 14, the through movement on 14 is actually a curve to the right, whereas West Main Street's alignment is straight ahead of you. So the turn lane to go into West Main Street is technically straight ahead, but it is in the turn lane itself. So the incidents that have occurred are that drivers will weave from one lane to another, trying to correct themselves to where they're going, or they will proceed, for example, in the inside lane of 14, and they will go straight as opposed to turning to the right as the lane is marked. It's our opinion, based on a traffic assessment of the situation, that additional signage would help clarify that for motorists. Signage in particular that's placed over the exact lane that is in use. So a mast arm with the signs placed over each particular position to help motorists know what direction to travel, as well as some pavement markings to denote the actual road itself that you're in for that lane, and then possibly some colored pavement treatments in the island over at West Main Street so that it's a little bit more visible that it's not part of the through lanes. One facet, this would require IDOT consideration and approval, of course, being their roadway, but in order to kickstart the process and maybe incite them to react to it, there is Highway Safety Improvement Program money typically each year. We were the recipients of some of that for our Three Oaks Road project. 90% of Phase 2 engineering and construction is covered by that grant program. So the majority of the costs for this process and this project could be outside grant money, with kind of our local share just being some of that preliminary coordination and Phase 1 engineering, which is outlined here on the table. So if the board has a desire to see if we can work together with IDOT and make an improvement, we can start that process, but it would require some seed money and effort on our part.
The local share would come from our TIF2 fund. That's what we plan right now. So this wouldn't be coming out of the capital projects fund. I don't see us recommending this project going forward without that grant to help assist. So, as Eric mentioned, this is a IDOT roadway. We understand there is an issue here, and we're trying to help out within the resources that we have.
Do they have approval for the signage then? And have they given that yet?
No.
Okay.
You
Well, they
haven't
know
had
it's
any-
a,
you haven't had
it's
any
a high
discussions
impact
with them yet,
intersection.
yeah.
Oh, I like the signage. I think it's a necessity.
Yeah, this is, and it's all MUTCD standard signage. We didn't do anything overly crazy or creative here. It's standard stock signs right off the list of approved signage from FHWA. So we believe it has a very good shot at being something IDOT could support and get behind. But obviously, there's a little bit of legwork needs to be done for us to get that in front of the state and see if they would participate in it.
I think it would behoove us to do that.
Right. Moving along, this is another project that's been in some past CIP presentations. This is Bristol Way between, it's either Montana or Decker. I think it's Montana at that point, and it goes eastward. This roadway has experienced some heaving, so in the wintertime, for whatever reason, there's some moisture that penetrates into the edge of the pavement, and with the freeze thawing action, pushes the pavement upward. So we're seeing substantial cracking and deterioration at the edge. The preliminary engineering that we've done on it so far indicates that there's two options for us. One would be to install some full depth patches, but in addition to that, do some lateral under drains to help get that water that's penetrating into the pavement structure out of that area and into some new storm inlets and convey it into the storm sewer system. That's the option that you see the numbers there for, about $40,000 for design for a future year for consideration, and maybe $150,000 or so for construction to make that fix. The only other option would be a full reconstruction of the roadway, so mill off the entire pavement structure and resurface it from the base up. So that would have approximately a $500,000 cost and price tag to it.
Didn't we just do this?
I was just going to ask that question
Yes.
too. I thought we just did Bristol.
Roadway
Yeah.
is not that old, and that is the main reason why we're recommending consideration of the under drain concept and the patches to the outside edge of the roadway. Or the other option would be to manage it the best we can with some minor, not full depth patches, but some surface patches just to get us by until the road does reach the end of its life and then reconstruct it at that point. But it's still a pretty substantial cost. Doing it sooner obviously takes advantage of some of the life that is left in the road that was done recently. So we're not proposing it right away for the next fiscal year, but it is something that we do feel warrants some priority in the mid-range plan of our 5-year program. And this is just a summary of the different road projects, many of which we touched on in these previous slides. Other ones that we didn't talk about in great detail were actually the other ones we'll talk about in the next slides. Any questions to this set?
We've added in here too, the First Street extension, Maplewood Access Road. We didn't talk about that at all. These are all on future unfunded projects, downtown streetscape.
And on the MFT side, the previous slide was capital fund. Those are the projects that were MFT eligible. Obviously, Three Oaks Road, the illuminated street name sign project we spoke about, and resurfacing. Next category is pedestrian bikeway projects. These projects I think the board has seen before, so I'll go pretty quickly unless you'd like to discuss them. West Main Street, this one is, we're waiting on the Safe Routes to School grant to see if that 100% construction grant is awarded. We should hear about that in March, I believe. Route 14 sidewalk, this one has a $100,000 DCEO grant opportunity for us. That's the Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity. That covers $100,000 of about $150,000 project.
When does TIF 1 expire?
I believe May 1 of 2020.
And how much money do we have in there currently? Do you know offhand? If not, that's okay.
I do not. Do you know the number? We can get back to you, Trustee Kraus.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's over $1 million.
Like 870.
At the end of the TIF, though, that money goes back to those taxing bodies.
Any balance that's left in there. We've got a project that we'll talk about here, the regional lift station, that's going to cover a lot of that. So.
And then the out years, there's some sidewalk gaps in the older parts of town that we had previously applied for a CDBG block grant. We weren't successful at that point, but we will probably throw our hat in the ring and make another attempt in a future year. And then the High Road sidewalk extension, that's just an extension of a sidewalk. Right now, you can't walk from the commuter lot in the north over to Main Street without walking in the roadway. This would extend that sidewalk along the Carrie Ale House over to the commuter lot. So that's a future unfunded project at this point. Flooding mitigation. This was covered with our flooding analysis that was done last fiscal year. Right now, we're proposing for the next fiscal year to implement $259,000 in construction projects as a result of that flooding study, with the balance right now at this point as future to be determined based on funding. So there's a balance of over $10 million in other projects we've identified through that study.
It's important to note that all these projects here within the drainage improvements all come out of the Capital Projects Fund. Capital Projects Fund, we'll get into it here a little bit later. We have a cash flow issue. So we're going to have limited investment related to drainage projects over the next couple of years until we can solve that problem that we have within the Capital Projects Fund.
So the majority of those funds, that $259,000, will be for the construction of the culvert expansion over at Spring Street. That's right now in design process and hopefully starting permitting process shortly, so we can get that one bid out for construction this summer. The other portions are actually carryovers from just a logistical standpoint. We weren't able to finish them in the current fiscal year, but we do recommend still finishing them out over in what we call Area 3. So by Lloyd Street in Sandra Lane, there's a drywall that needs to be replaced. It's not functioning right now. That's about $15,000. And then over Knotty Pine Park, the detention basin south of Three Oaks Road has a drainage structure that has failed that needs to be replaced. So that's about $20,000. And then the Spring Street Culvert project, which that 300 also includes the balance of any permitting and design and construction engineering. A couple other projects that are just in the radar that we've identified through analysis, Clare Avenue rear yard drainage. This is by Clare and Decker. And then West Oriole Trail, there's a section of roadway there that has no surface curb and gutter. And during heavy rain events, the outer edges of the water tend to get submerged for a short time until the water can flow down the hill towards the first storm sewer. So that project is a little over $300,000 for construction of that, should it be prioritized with amongst our other projects. Water and sanitation. This has also been part of our past discussions with the rate study that's currently in effect, our current water sewer rates. Our SCADA system is in some dire need of updating. We have a lot of equipment that's either it's on their obsolete, discontinued lists, or it's in their or list of about to be discontinued. So support's not there and replacement parts aren't there. Our needs assessment that we did this fiscal year proposed a 5-year phasing, the first phase of which we do have funds allocated with our rate study, and we will propose about $300,000 of design build work to do the first phase of that SCADA replacement. The other big project from that rate study was the rehabilitation of the treatment system at well 10. This is the well that's over on Fox Trails North. That system has got an existing berm that covers up the treatment system itself, which is not a standard that's allowed by the current design requirements. So we're starting design this fiscal year, and we will have the contract for that design before the board shortly. We just received proposals and are negotiating that scope of services and contract now. In addition to the treatment system, we're also looking at an option to rehabilitate the actual well itself, which would be the pump and the motors down in the well, to see the condition of it, first of all, to see if it warrants being replaced at the same time as the rest of the well infrastructure, but also to see if it's possible to get some enhanced performance and production out of the well, which may be beneficial for future development along Route 31 corridor, for instance. So we do feel it's worthwhile to explore that option, and that design and construction for the first year, the upcoming fiscal year, covers that with design and then construction in FY 2021. And as I mentioned, this one was considered and accounted for in the current rate study.
Are we having issues with this location? Or is it something that we're being forced to do because it doesn't meet the current standards?
It doesn't meet standards, but it also just the life expectancy of the actual equipment itself. That's summarize it, John. So we can give you more details if you like when we present the contract for design.
Okay.
Water meter replacement program. This has been a multi-year effort to convert the old water meters over to the radio read iPearl units, which is the brand name for the unit that's out there. We've got a couple more years left in the program. Now we've hit all the low-hanging fruits. Now we're hitting all the more difficult ones as we hit the final stretch here. The homes that are older may have a lot of old gate valves that are a little bit more difficult to close and seal off. Some of the older parts where B-boxes don't quite shut off as easily as and as fast as we hope, but we are making progress. So we have about 1,500 left to go out of the 6,800 or so customers we started out with. And this is, again, just kind of repeating some of the stuff from the rate study discussions previously. Some filter rehab, the well itself that we talked about at well 10. And also in the current rate study is a fire hydrant replacement program. So there is dollars that are allocated to getting rid of some of the older units that are headed toward the end of their life expectancy. And capital maintenance on all the various wells, things like roofs, doors, masonry, things like that. Same thing for towers, some basic cleaning in the current fiscal year. Regional lift station, as we talked about previously, this one is over by the vicinity of Selkie property. So we're in design right now, and the current estimated construction cost still does place this within approximately where our budget targets were, which is relative to our TIF balances.
Can we back up real quick to the water tower maintenance page? So for fiscal 23-24, what tower 1 has almost 850,000 in it? What is that for?
That would be for the tower painting and equipment rehabilitation.
And how often do they have to be repainted?
Yeah, 15 to 20 years. aren't they?
Every 15 years.
Okay. So
This
it's
is
a
tower
painting and
1.
what else?
Rehabilitation of the equipment in the tank itself. So once the paint's all sandblasted and stripped off, that's the time to do any metal repairs and hardware and equipment repairs that are out there. This is the Tower 1, which is on High Road, so it's actually the oldest tower in the system. On the sanitation side, most of that work is just some maintenance and repairs that are typical for the HOR facility. We recommend continuing our sewer lining and sewer televising programs so we can help identify what needs attention on the sewer pipes and addressing any leakage and infiltration and inflow that might occur. Not as much here because the main project was the phosphorus project that is wrapping up this year.
This is another pretty powerful slide that we have within our presentation this evening. We show all the funds that we've talked about. If you look at that first column, capital projects, vehicle and equipment, MFT, water and sand, parking, building, land conservancy. If you go across that fund row, you'll see those various columns that will be all those fiscal years, the next 5 fiscal years of various expenditures, which gets us to a total cost and then projected funding. And then finally, the funding source column. So I mentioned it earlier in the presentation here, the capital projects fund, and we have a cash flow issue within the capital projects fund. You can see next year in the fiscal 19-20, we're expecting to do approximately $1 million worth of projects, and we have estimated funding. Again, all these numbers are estimates, but $850,000. So what I am asking for and recommending here is that we move revolving loan fund dollars over to the capital projects fund so that we're able to complete our capital projects fund for fiscal year 19-20. We have interest, potential interest by a potential business to use some of the revolving loan fund. If the board is interested in that, we probably would have the ability to accommodate that request. But I do recommend closing out that revolving loan fund, moving that over to capital projects. Vehicle and equipment, you can see if you get in the yellow there in the total cost versus projected funding, we're doing pretty good for the next 5 years, but it's beyond that there's some concern, and this shouldn't come as any surprise. We've talked about this for the last couple of years. This is why we do this. This is why we present this information to the village board so that we're able to make thoughtful, informed decisions. Motor fuel tax, that is paid to the village of Cary on a per capita basis, and that's what we use for our road program. So if we go back to that slide where it showed those various, revenue inputs, $450,000, it's not going to be enough. We're going to have to look at some funding sources for our road program to help supplement what we get from MFT. Water and sanitation, right now as a board, I think everyone was on the board, I believe, when we passed that water and sewer rate study previously. That water and sewer rate study gets us through approximately the next 2 or 3 years. So we will be doing another water and sewer rate study here within the next couple of years to ensure that we're charging a fair rate to our customers, but then also ensuring when we talk about some of these big projects within the water and sanitation fund that we have enough revenue to maintain that important infrastructure. So for the most part, I think we're going to be in good shape from a water and sanitation fund. That, as a reminder, that is run purely as an enterprise fund, so those dollars that come in stay within that fund. The parking fund, you can see we have some upcoming expenditures purely related to the Metro building in 19-20, approximately $900,000. As of, we're projecting again, the estimate here, as of April of 19, we'll have $450,000. So to complete the Metro building, we may have to have a transfer from general fund surplus that ultimately the parking fund revenue would pay that back over time. The building fund, this was set up to pay for a new Village Hall Police Station. The village currently has, if you look at the projected funding, that's the existing balance of $1.1 million to pay for a new building. If that's the direction we decide to go, a cost approximately of $9.5 million, we'd be looking at some type of a bond issue, issuing debt, which isn't unique. Certainly the Village of Cary shouldn't be sitting on that much cash to pay for a new building. And the process, we'll see how it plays out here with the architect selection and bring more information to the village board. So again, you can make an informed decision. Land Conservancy Fund, The Land Conservancy Fund, various costs over the next 5 years. We're in pretty good shape with the Land Conservancy Fund, but keep in mind there isn't any funding source right now for the Land Conservancy Fund. We are in good shape again for the next 5 years, but need to have it in the back of our mind as we evaluate all the funds. So are there any questions immediately that the board has related to this slide?
I have one for Mike on the Land Conservancy Fund. What kind of an account does that money sit in? Is it just earning interest, or is there any way we could make that money work better for us and have a higher rate of return?
Well, I mean, when you say a higher rate of return, we're probably looking at close to 2% now. In terms of anything better than that, the short-term rate, no.
But in terms of like investing it or something?
Well, I mean, we're limited to what we can invest it in. So pretty much you're looking at certificates of deposits, that type of thing. Government funds that are sitting out there, nothing such as the stock market or anything like that you're going to generate any money with.
It's a good question. We try to, I guess, do the best that we can within the limitations that we have. So
there's always limitations.
Darn it.
That's it. Thank you.
So CIP revenue sources, and this is more of a summary here. So again, the capital projects fund balance approximately $850,000, recommending combining that revolving loan fund, closing out that fund to help assist with capital projects. Land Conservancy balance, which I mentioned, vehicle and equipment as well. Recurring revenue sources, so these are annual revenue sources. MFT, we've talked about that for our roads. On a per capita basis, we receive that revenue. Water and sanitation fees that we get from our customers. The commuter parking lot revenue is approximately $220,000 for our commuter fees. And I do think we've talked about it previously, and there wasn't a lot of interest from the village board about a natural gas utility tax. But that will be one of the first items that we talk about, whether it's the same folks up here after the election or there's new folks up here after the election. We have to look at another funding source for these funds. So our 5-year, the CIP cost projection, approximately $30 million. Our funding projection at plus or minus $19 million. $million. It's not unique. This isn't unique for other municipalities. Here you have this gap. It is what it is. But that's why we do this. That's why we present this information to the village board. We get feedback on what are the most important projects so we can put those to the forefront. We always want to have wishes and items that are sitting out there just in case we attain large amount of cash. We're ready to go with certain projects. And again, future recurring revenue sources. We need to, and that's going to be one of the most important goals here for the Village of Cary, not only next year, but the next several years. We need to find recurring revenue sources. Capital Projects Fund and roads, those are the most important. But again, we can't lose sight of the Vehicle and Equipment Fund. Vehicle and Equipment Fund is funded for the next 5 years, but we have to think beyond the next 5 years. General fund's not currently an option. Ideally, we increase the revenues in the general fund and have the ability to transfer dollars over into these various funds. So it's a problem we're going to have to continue to work. We'll have to work collectively with the village board and with staff to come up with various options. So feedback, I know we went through a lot of items. If there's feedback that you have tonight, any additional, that's great. If there are items that come up, excuse me, that come up over the next few days or next week, please let me know. We'll use this information to help us refine the budget as we get ready for our budget meeting on March 16th, especially for the projects that we have for next fiscal year. So again, a reminder for the public, our next budget meeting will be Saturday, March 16th at 9 a.m. Any questions from the board?
It's a lot, I know, daunting when it comes to it, but I would strongly recommend that if you have an opportunity to sit down and talk with Jake and Eric or Michael, before the budget workshop, so you have a really good understanding about some of the decisions that we're going to have to make moving forward, at least for the next year. A lot of information. It will be interesting to see where everybody wants to prioritize. on what we're looking at doing. So highly recommend sitting down and talking with staff before the budget workshop. No other questions, I'm assuming here right now. We are not going to have an executive session this evening, so that has been canceled. So therefore, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.